the things that come in. So that's gonna do it. That's gonna do it. That's gonna do it. And this past September, October, that's not right. It's not right. So she whites. She whites up. The words. And again, if you guys have been here for a minute, you already know the story. Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. And welcome to my November mid-month wrap-up. So it's not that I'm reading like a crazy ton of books, but I figure between the Thanksgiving holiday coming up for me and NaNoWriMo, and just I feel like Thanksgiving to New Year's just becomes complete chaos. I'm a little bit afraid I'm not going to remember all the details about these books. So I thought we would just dive on in and just talk about a bunch of books I've read because they're also pretty amazing. So one thing I found every year when I do Nano is, and for those of you who are new here, it's National Novel Writing Month. I am a writer aspiring to be published. I am working on revising a draft of a novel I already wrote. So I'm kind of regular NaNoWriMo, you're just free writing, new story. I am actually in a story I've already written. So anyway, long story short, my head is in a lot of different places and I'm finding it difficult to get into some books because I don't want to read anything that's too similar to what I'm writing, which I'm super cryptic about, but basically like a friend group thriller is what I'll give you. And it's what I love to read. So I'm trying to like not be too into that. So anyway, I'm also finding audiobooks to work really well for me. So I've been consuming a lot on audiobook, just to set a little bit of groundwork for you guys. And also I always find during National Novel Writing Month that a reread for me is also a great choice because it's a story I'm already familiar with, and I usually do a reread if I'm gearing up to read like a next in a series or if I am just craving something. So along those lines, I am continuing to read the Kay Scarpetta series by Patricia Cornwell, and this is book number 10, Black Notice. So if you guys watched my October wrap up, and I know there's some shine to this, so I'm gonna try and make it not be totally blinding. When I did my October wrap up, I was like, I'm gonna press pause on the series. I had listened to books 3 through 9 in October, like consumed them like a crazy person, loved them. And I was like, I'm just gonna take a little bit of a break. And I feel like a week into November, I was like, I miss Kay and all of her friends. So I'm back into it. So finished book 10. I'm currently halfway through book number 11, and I am still in the reread portion of my journey with Kay. So again, this is a very long series. Book number 26 just came out. So I don't wanna get too plotty on this one because it does give a lot away, but this book picks up a little bit over a year after book 9 ends. And as the series progresses, we get so much more from these characters. And I feel like I've been thinking about trying to just do like a specific Patricia Cornwell video to kind of talk more about just the books holistically without giving anything away plot-wise. But I feel like these characters showed up very fully formed in book number 1. And we continue to get so many more layers and so many more complications. And I mentioned this in my October wrap up as well. One of my favorite things about this series is how real these characters feel to me, in the sense of they are messy and they make bad choices and they backslide, and we get to see how all of the cases and all of the events of all of the novels, both personally and professionally, continue to impact them and change them and sort of inform who they are as characters and inform the decisions they make going forward, personally and professionally, because there's such a great blend of both sides of the table in these books. So it is medical examiner, police procedural, FBI, and we get these very dark and often gruesome cases, and we also get family and personal relationships and the personal relationships that come out of the professional relationships. And I just love it so much. And one of the things I love about this book in particular is we are seeing such impact from everything that has happened in books 1 through 9. And I don't know, like I hesitate to say like she's hit her stride anywhere, because there are so many great books along the way. But this and book 11 that I'm currently in, which book 11 picks up like not even 24 hours after book 10 ends, I feel like there's just such great things happening. So I'm not going to tell you what they are, obviously, but we get a little international in this book. And again, another thing I love about Patricia Cornwall is how she will pull things from the past and pull them into the present. We're always getting new characters, but we're also being reintroduced from characters we've met before. And I just think she's absolutely great, obviously. So highly, highly, highly recommend this series. I do think this is a series where you need to start at the beginning to really understand the impact, particularly of the relationships between the characters. From a case standpoint, they will explain past cases if it's relevant, but I think the personal dynamics in Kay as a character is best understood from the start. So I hear you, 26 books, it's a lot to invest in, but I also think they're super well done, and the audiobooks have been really strong. So if that's a route to go, maybe that works for you. But anyway, couldn't stay away, still in the land of Kay. But I did make some pivots into something new. So I picked up the Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. This is all the things I love. We get past and present timelines. We get a bit of a true crime element to this. And in typical Simone St. James fashion, this is the second book of hers I've read. Typical. We get some ghosty, spooky vibes going on in it. So in this one, which I also feel like is typical Simone St. James fashion, we get two very different timelines. So we have 1977 and we have 2017, set in Oregon. And we have a true crime blogger named Shay. So she works at a doctor's office by day, and by night she runs this true crime podcast called The Book of Cold Cases. And she is at work one day, and this woman comes in for an appointment, and Shay immediately recognizes her because she is steeped in true crime and in all the things. And she recognizes this woman who was known as the Lady Killer back in 1977. And her name is Beth, and she was arrested but eventually released for the murder, very, very brutal murder, of two men in Oregon. And the entire town, I get the sense, never really believed that she was innocent. And she has sort of been, I don't want to say ostracized, she's sort of been holed up in her family home where she grew up ever since she was released from prison back in the day. And Shay boldly asks her if she can interview her, and surprisingly Beth agrees. So we wind up getting Beth's story. We again get to see the past and present timelines as Shay is investigating this case that was cold, but there's a lot of questions around it. So I read The Sundown Motel last year, I want to say, which was my first Simone St. James. And to me, that book was much spookier and scarier than this one was. So this was definitely very well done. There were definitely like some creepy moments to it. And a lot of it revolves around Shay visiting Beth at her house and something about the house kind of being not right. So while I definitely found it to be atmospheric, I was never scared in this book. Whereas I felt with Sundown Motel, sometimes I would flip a page and I would be like, oh my God, look what's happening right now. So this to me was highly entertaining. I really enjoyed Shay as a character. Shay has, you know, her own reasons for wanting to do a true crime podcast. And I feel like this was one of those cases where I wish we knew a little bit more about Shay's past earlier, because I feel like it would have helped me kind of understand some of her motivations a little bit better. But that's like kind of a, I don't know, I feel like that's, petty's not the right word. I'm having a hard time coming up with words today, as you guys can see. I feel like that's not a big criticism in any kind of a way. It was more of when we finally started to get to know Shay better. I feel like if I had known some of those things about her earlier, it just would have helped me understand her better sooner, if that makes sense. But I also understand the desire to hold back and not reveal things at the beginning. So it's not going to help you guys, is it? It was really, really good. Don't get me wrong. It's not any reason, there's nothing wrong with the book. Don't skip it. It's really well done. And I'm excited to read some more Simone St. James. So I picked up The Haunting of Maddie Clare, which if you guys saw my book haul, you would see that I picked that up because A, it was beautiful, B, everybody was talking about it on Instagram and I was missing out. And I thought it would be a great spooky read, and I haven't read it yet, but I will. And then I also have The Broken Girls, which I feel like is the one, and she has way more books than that, but I feel like The Broken Girls is the one that everybody says to read, so I'm definitely gonna go for it. But this was very entertaining. It was great for kind of that spooky time of year, super atmospheric. I feel like Simone St. James just such an outstanding job writing really strong, really complicated women, and just really like she gets it with her writing. That doesn't make sense either, does it? I just really enjoy her as an author and highly recommend her. But if you're afraid it's gonna be scary, I don't feel like it's scary, but I feel like it's spooky and atmospheric and well done. But I wasn't like afraid to go to sleep at night. There you go. A total 180 from that. I reread, I'm just taking some papers out of it, Finlay, Donovan Knocks Him Dead by El Calsamano. So this is the second book in the Finlay Donovan series, and book number 3 comes out in January, and I actually got an ARC of it. Thank you, thank you, thank you, from NetGalley. And I wanted to refresh myself because I actually was lucky enough to get an ARC of this last summer, and I read it, and it's been a minute. So I wanted to just sort of refresh my mind of where things were at the end, and I'm glad I did, because as much as I remembered the core of the story, I didn't remember sort of those final few beats of the story to see where we're going to pick up in book number 3. So again, a little bit loose on the plot line, but in book number 1, the setup is Finlay Donovan is a newly single mother of 2. Her husband left her for their realtor, and he lives down the street in book number 1, and there's obviously some fabulous complications between the two of them. Her husband's not the best dude, as you can imagine. And Finlay is a writer. She is just struggling on all the fronts. Her husband has fired their nanny, and Finlay is out at lunch with her editor, and somebody overhears her talking about the plot of her story because she writes mysteries and thrillers, and mistakes her as a hit woman and hires Finlay to kill their husband. So it's sort of that mad hijinks ensue kind of a situation. And I've said this 100 times. This reminds me of Dead to Me with Christina Applegate and Linda Cardellini, which I have to get Netflix back now because I see season 3 is premiering on there, and I love that show so much. So to me, it combines sort of the dynamic of that show in sort of a dark mystery humor way with kind of a Lucy and Ethel hijinks way, because in book number 1, Finlay is not standing for the fact that her husband fired the nanny, and she rehires Vero, who is her nanny, and the two of them together are like friendship goals, the best partners in crime. They get themselves in and out of trouble, and I just love it so much. And there's just a great extended cast of characters. We get some love interests, we get family, we get the nosy neighbors, and I just had a really good time with this book. So this book picks up not long after book number 1. So book number 1 definitely does that solve a mystery, leave a door open. And I would say it's very similar in look and feel. And you get, I feel like it met expectations. So if you enjoyed book number 1, I think you will enjoy the continuation of the story. And it's just like such great fun. I just really enjoy these books. I love these women together. I feel like my favorite part is Finlay and Vero together, and I think they're just such a great duo. So I am super excited for book number 3, and I highly recommend this series as well. They're just fun. They're just super, super fun books, and I love them. I just love them so much. Next up is a book that I have had on my shelf forever and a day, by which I mean I got this for Christmas last year, and it's Hello Transcriber by Hannah Morrissey. You guys, I have no excuse for why it took me this long to pick this book up, because I knew I was gonna love it. And I almost feel like there's a part, like, do you ever psych yourself up for a book where you're like, this is gonna be amazing, and then you become afraid to read it? I definitely do that a lot, but I picked it up. The sequel-ish, so The Widowmaker comes out first week of December, and it is set in the same town but with different characters. So I don't even want to call it a sequel because it's not. It's same universe. Hannah Morrissey herself has told us you can read book number 2 and then go back to book number 1 because it totally focuses on different people. So we're here for book number 1 because that's what I read. So this one follows a woman named Hazel who is a police transcriber in Wisconsin, which Hannah Morrissey herself was. And there's so many things I love about this book, but one of my favorite things, and I feel like this is what instantly drew me into it, but like kind of made me like a little nervous about reading it, which sounds really silly when I tell you what it is. So Hazel is an aspiring novelist, and she believes that writing a book is going to be her ticket out of Black Harbor, which is this very desolate, crime-ridden town that she's living in with her husband, and she's just not in a good place, and she's looking for her way out. And while that is certainly not my reality, I feel like the reality of writing this book, getting this book published is going to be my ticket out, is a feeling that I can relate to on so many levels. And I wanted to like be Hazel and see how her story ends. So there's so much great stuff about writing life in this that I totally connected to, which I absolutely loved. But make no mistake, this is a really dark thriller. This was dubbed Midwest Noir in a event I was watching called The Back Room, which Hank Phillippi Ryan and Karen Dion host. And I think it's like every other Sunday. I'll put the link down below. They have 4 authors come on. It's free. You just sign up for it. And they just chat about their books. And obviously they were talking about this. And that perfectly encapsulates what this book is. So it is so dark. It is so atmospheric. This is kind of that epitome of dark and messed up people doing dark and messed up things. So Hazel is working the overnight shift as a police transcriber. So she works, I think it's like 11 to 7 or midnight to 8 in the morning. And she's at the police station mostly alone. So not long after Hazel is hired, where she is transcribing the dictations from the different investigators about crime scenes that they have attended, about warrants they're putting out, she becomes super engrossed in all of the really, really terrible things that are happening in this town. And she believes that she can use some of this information in her books, and it's the book that's going to be her way out. So she becomes really fascinated with the different crimes and the investigations that are going on, particularly one where early on, her neighbor confesses to the police that he had a hand in hiding the body of a young boy who died from an overdose. And there have been a rash of drug overdoses in this town, and the police are trying to obviously find out who is behind it, who the distributor is, the dark and seedier side of things. And Hazel becomes kind of enamored with the lead detective on the case, who's got all of his own baggage, of course, and she sort of helps him with this covert operation to find out what's going on. So this is one of those books where also, this is not a big book. There is so much packed into this book. So much goes on here. We get complicated family relationships. We get very complicated relationships in the workforce, at the police station, with the other people she's working with. This town, again, so dark and atmospheric. It's so beautifully painted, even in all the darkness. There's so many beautiful just turns of phrases. Like, she just has something about the way she writes, even in the darkest moments, that are beautiful. And in that sense, it kind of reminds me of how Tana French can turn these beautiful phrases in these very dark books that she writes. And I really just love these dark and messy and messed up characters. And I love characters who are complicated and who are interesting, and I just wanted to know what was going to happen, and I just wanted to read more. And I thought the reveal was great. Again, I thought the writing was just absolutely wonderful. This is her debut novel, and I think she just absolutely nailed it. I just loved this book so much. I cannot wait to read The Widowmaker, and I'm just such a super fan of hers. I think Hannah Morrissey, I was going to say Hazel Greenlee, that's the character. I think Hannah Morrissey and Hazel just do such a tremendous job. And again, I mean, I talk about this all the time, where I feel like books find you when they're supposed to, and there's a time and a place for every book. So I'm very glad that this was my time and place, and I'm so excited to get into the next one. And I actually have the arc of The Widowmaker also from NetGalley, which is crazy. So I don't know what's going on with NetGalley that they suddenly decided to give me books that I requested, but stay tuned for that, because I will be reading it and reviewing it in the short term. But highly recommend this book, big time. So because I did read some dark books this month, I was also looking for a bit of a palette cleanser. So Finlay Donovan was definitely a palette cleanser for me. And then I also wound up picking up Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. So I read Verity last year, the year before. I knew that that was her dark and messed up book in the collection. I am not a big romance reader. If you guys have been here, you know that. But I can't help but be kind of sucked in by the coho hype, and I'm fascinated by why people are fascinated with her. And I was like, maybe I should just read one of her romance books and see if I am missing out, because friends of mine love her so much, and I am fascinated with her career. There was this amazing article about her in the New York Times, could have been like a month ago now, about how she created this career for herself. And I know TikTok really put her into the stratosphere, but I find her personal story so compelling, which happens a lot for me. I get very fascinated with authors and then read their books and find them that way. and I just wanted to know what it was all about. So I picked up Ugly Love. Don't ask me why this is the one I picked up, but I did. So I'm gonna just read I did the audiobook of it, which was well done, but I definitely think I'm not really like a romance reader. So Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand and I were talking about it, and I just told her, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I feel like it's kind of like a little bit hokey at times. Like, I'm not sure I can get into this. And she's like, it's candy, like treat it as candy. That's what it is. Like, she basically was like, you're thinking too much. Just lean back and enjoy. So I tried to like turn my thinking brain off, which is a little hard for me sometimes, but tried to give in. So this is about a woman named Tate, and she meets airline pilot Miles Archer, and not love at first sight. So when the book opens, Tate is moving in with her brother for a short term until she finds an apartment. She is a nurse, her brother is a pilot, and she gets to his apartment. He's not home, but there is this well, he's not really raging, this just passed out drunk dude laying in front of his door. So she can't get in. And she winds up calling her brother, finds out it's her brother's friend. He comes and crashes on the couch. But basically she's just like completely turned off by him out of the gate, even though he's of course smoking hot. So long story short, doesn't take too long before some attraction starts to develop between the two. But Miles has a thing. So they decide to basically be a friends with benefits kind of a relationship, and the rules are never ask about the past and don't expect a future. So these are Miles' rules, and Tate's very much like, that's cool, like I'm not in it to win it, I have a job to do, like this is just sort of like a side fun thing. You live like down the hall or across the hall from my brother, it's super convenient, it's like a relationship of convenience and location, all's fine. And of course it's not all fine. So we wind up getting a past timeline from Miles to kind of start to learn and understand why he is the way he is. They are both, I want to say like 23 and 25 or something, like they're in their early 20s. And while this was definitely entertaining, there's definitely some steamy scenes in this. This is definitely a very toxic relationship. This is definitely not a manual on romance, and I definitely enjoyed parts of it. And I will say I did wind up crying at one point, which I did not see coming, and it was the most, not even like innocuous moment, but it was a very subtle moment I feel in the book, as a book that has a lot of like drama and stuff that goes on in it, but it was a more subtle moment, and for some reason it just got me. And I was actually out for a walk, so I fully was like walking and wiping tears out of my face, but it's fine. It was the wind, just got something in my eye. But there were also moments that were supposed to be, I think, sexy, and I just was laughing, and I just couldn't get out of my head with some of it. So some of it was steamy and some of it was meant to be steamy, and I just found it to be kind of silly. And I don't know if it would have read differently if I was physically reading it versus listening to it, but I feel like sometimes the audiobook narrator, and this has happened a couple times with, I want to say it was like the kiss quotient, where I was also like just giggling because I was like, this does not sound sexy in the telling of it, but definitely was a palate cleanser. I am not closing a door to Colleen Hoover in any way. Again, I have major respect for her as a writer and with what she has done, and I understand why people gobble these books up. So it was definitely entertaining. I did feel a little bit exhausted after, because there's just a lot going, like these characters have a lot going on with them. And again, toxic love, maybe not ugly love, maybe toxic love is what it should be called. But I'm glad I read it, and yeah, I think if you can turn your brain off and go in for the candy effect, you're good to go. I just had a hard time turning my brain off, but enjoyed it, glad I read it. And then the last book I read as of like this time of the month, which I loved absolutely so much. It's The Resemblance. I don't know why I just did that with a twist, by Lauren Nosset. So this was her debut book as well. I just listened to, she did an interview on the Poison Pen website with Ashley Winstead interviewing her, which, favorite people ever. And it was so good. And Lauren Nosset, like, she was like, this was my, I want to say this was her 7th book that she wrote. So she very much was like, don't give up. And I was like, thank you, girl, thank you. This is a police procedural campus thriller with Greek life, with very complicated feelings and characters and a bit of dark academia. And oh my gosh, I just loved it so much. This was one of those books when I did my November new releases, did not have this on my radar, and I don't know how I missed it. Every month this happens. Every month there is a book that I completely miss when I'm doing my thing despite doing all the research. And as soon as I see it come out, I'm like, how did I miss this? And I need to read this. So I legit just like picked this up immediately and then like bought it immediately and then read it immediately. And I loved it. So this book takes place at UGA and it actually opens on November 12th. And I actually started reading this on November 12th, which was just sheer coincidence. But like, I was like, this is fate. I'm meant to read this right now. So in this book, we are following Detective Marlet Kaplan, and she is at her mom's office. Her mom is a German professor at UGA, and she's leaving her mom's office, and she winds up being the first on the scene of a fatal hit and run crash that takes place on campus. So this boy, Jay, who is like a super popular frat boy, like just handsome, everybody loves him, he's all the things, he is hit by a car and the car keeps on going. And he was in a crosswalk and there's a whole bunch of witnesses, and all of the witnesses agree on two things, which is that the driver of the car looked like the victim and the driver in the car was smiling when he hit him. So that's nice and creepy on all the fronts. So Marlet is committed to being assigned to this case. We get very interesting dynamics on the police detective side of things, and she winds up investigating Jay and the crime and becoming very involved in the fraternity and Greek life. And it is very much about the dark side of Greek life and about privilege and about power, and on a university setting, in the Greek life setting. And I just loved it so much. So I was part of Greek life. This was not my reality as far as some of the darker sides of things, but I know it was the reality of people that I knew. And a lot of what is in here rang very true for me. And I just thought it was really well done. I really enjoyed Martlet as character. And I will say this book definitely went in a direction I wasn't expecting. And I just like loved it. Like I definitely had, I can think of like two specific moments in this book where I was just like, oh my gosh, like just blown away by what she did with the story, by what she did with the characters. And I definitely had moments where I was like, no, that's not happening. That can't be happening. And it just was so well written, so atmospheric, like so, again, kind of like with the Hannah Morrissey book, so beautifully descriptive, from the leaves, from how the campus looks, from describing the people, from describing the fraternity house, from just how she relays the emotions of different people. And you know, there's backstory to everyone that we wind up getting. There's complicated relationships. Again, I become so increasingly interested in these characters who are messy and make mistakes and try to like correct course, or some people who don't correct course, and I just find them so interesting to me. And Marlet is just, she is dogged, she is persistent, she has a lot of her own reasons for why she is fighting as hard as she is fighting. And I just really loved this book. And I thought it was just gonna kind of be like a campus thriller, and it is. But there's also so much more that is going on here. And I love the blend of police investigation with the campus thriller. So a lot of times you get kind of like the amateur detective, or we get, you know, like the reunion and things go wrong with a friend group and someone's out for revenge. And I love all of those stories. But I really enjoyed the fact that we are getting police procedural mixed in with the college campus, and particularly with the Greek life. I know a lot of books will explore Greek life, but I also feel like it was also very different in this one, but like accurate. I don't know if that makes any kind of sense, but I really enjoyed it. It definitely, again, I said it took me by surprise in some ways. I don't know, I just loved it so much. I feel like I'm still like riding the high of this because I just finished it the other day. And it's one of these books where I also feel like there's little nuggets that I didn't even see at the time that at the end also completely made sense. I saw the breadcrumbs in hindsight of what was there, And as much as I was trying to figure out kind of what happened, I also was just so engrossed in the story and Marlet, and we are investigating alongside her, which I also like. So I feel like we are taken on the ride with her. And oh, it's so good. Even when it was uncomfortable, it was good. And it just, I really, really loved it. I highly recommend it so much. And again, I just think she does a great job of exploring the darkness. She herself was a German professor, so she's got a lot of experience working on college campuses and with college kids or college students. I shouldn't call them kids, but I really feel like she captured that atmosphere and she captured the emotions of this. And I feel like she did a great job capturing both. So Marlet, I want to say, is like 29. It's a young police squad. They talk about that, like her partner, I think he's like 32, so it's on the younger side, but I think she does a great job capturing sort of that character, as well as also capturing these 19, 20, 21-year-old college students that they are interviewing and dealing with. And I just loved it. I just loved it so much. So another short read, a very fast read, tabbed up because there were so many great things that happened in this book, and I just loved it. So that's gonna do it for what I've read so far. I am currently halfway through the next Patricia Cornwell, which is The Last Precinct. And then I also picked up Jackal by Aaron Adams. And I wanna say I'm like 60 pages in. And I love you guys, but I also would like to be reading that. So that's what I'm gonna go do. But let me know if you guys have read anything outstanding this month, if you would recommend anything this month. Did anybody just find a book they didn't even know it was coming out, picked it up, read it, and were blown away by it? Just me? Hopefully you guys had that kind of experience too. But let me know, and I will see you guys in another video really soon. So thanks for being here, and that's all. Bye guys.